Hi everyone, my name is Sally Fowler. I'm the owner and trainer for Disabled Advantage. Thank you for joining me on my Patreon podcast, Service Dog Questions Answered. In today's question, I'm going to be talking about what socialization is and what it means in particular for training a service dog. Socialization is the umbrella term that I like to use that means a lot of different things. And that may not sit well with everybody that I use this word very broadly. But the reason I use this word so broadly is because it's a very complicated and complex topic. And I've found that it's simpler when I talk to people and teach people to just simplify it all into one encompassing word. So for me, the word I use is socialization. And in general, whether you're training a pet dog or a service dog or another type of working dog, socialization is the process of teaching your dog about the human world and how to remain neutral, confident, at ease, relaxed, comfortable, and capable in that world, no matter what's going on or what's happening. And the spectrum of socialization is going to change depending on what kind of dog you're training. If you're training a pet dog, you're really only trying to get them used to sights and sounds and smells that they're going to experience at home. If you want to be able to take them to work with you because you work in a pet-friendly office, or you want to go to pet-friendly patios or pet-friendly stores, it gets a little bit bigger. You need to make sure that they're going to be okay with the sounds of an office, like a printer and doors opening and closing and people coming and going, or how to sit next to a table without stealing food off of it, and how to see road traffic and be okay with it, and how to see other dogs and not react to them, and how to walk through aisles without grabbing everything off the shelves. And a lot of that sounds like obedience training, and it is, but obedience training overlaps with socialization way more than people realize. And that's part of why it starts to become a little bit more complicated to talk about and to cover. When you're training a service dog, though, that service dog needs to be able to, think about it this way. So, service dogs in the US go everywhere with their person. Everywhere that their person goes, that service dog has to be able to stay cool, stay calm, stay composed, listen to commands, not get distracted, and stay on task in whatever environment they're in with their handler. And there are some exceptions. They're not allowed in burn units in hospitals. If someone's in a bubble room in an ICU clean room, they may not be allowed in there. Science labs might have different restrictions, and kitchens of restaurants. So there are some exceptions, but broadly, service dogs go to, let's say, 98% of the places that their handler goes. And that's a big number of experiences that we need to try to prepare our dogs for. And so that's how socialization changes depending on what kind of dog you're training. But the methods of socialization, how to go about doing it, how to handle difficult situations, and how to, what kind of mindset you want to encourage in your dog, that doesn't change. So that does stay the same across the board with most dogs. Things might change a little bit for police dogs and military dogs, so I'm not going to delve down that road. But for pet dogs, dogs who go to pet-friendly places, and service dogs, that's generally how it's going to go. But what is socialization? You might be listening to this and thinking, okay, so it's this, and this, but hold on, what is it? What does it mean? And it means to teach your dog to accept the world. But what's included in that? And that's where terminology starts to get a little complicated. technically, there are a lot of different words that dog trainers like to put out there that mean getting your dog used to gear, getting your dog used to the crate, getting your dog used to the car, getting your dog used to the grocery store, getting your dog used to fireworks. And I could use all the words. But one, I have brain fog. And so it gets a little confused in my head sometimes, remembering the exact specific scientific technical word for all of the things. Second, I tend to do best with just generalizing things under one word, even if it's not specifically 100% accurate. And that may bother people, but I'm also trying to teach people how to do socialization and how to be responsible teams and how to set their dog up for success working in public. And most of the time, the people I'm working with don't necessarily care that they're using the exact right word, because this isn't a law exam. They're not getting a degree in this. They're just trying to do the best that they can and be the best team that they can be. And most of my training, like with most of my training, I start out by teaching people the action of stuff, not so much focusing on the words. I don't want people to get hung up on words. And so that very much comes into play too when I teach people about concepts for dog training, concepts they need to understand so that they can train their dog best out in public. And I try to think of socialization more as a concept and less as a, hey, you need to know these exact right words, otherwise you failed. I also sometimes do use alternatively the word desensitization, but while desensitization is the word I grew up on from horse training, it's a very difficult word to spell reliably. And the computer doesn't always even recognize it as a word. And so socialization, it's easier to say, it's easier to spell, it's easier to type, it takes less finger movement to fix the word if I mess it up or have to type it a bunch in a handout. So I umbrella everything under socialization. Okay, mini rant there, but had to get that out there. Socialization covers a lot of different stuff. And it begins the day your dog is born. Whether you have that dog or not, your dog, the day it pops out, starts learning about the world around them. Good breeders, good dog raisers, are going to do their very best to make sure that your dog develops with stability. And that's looking like, getting the dog used to being held and touched and feeling a towel on them and hearing the washing machine and hearing the dishwasher and hearing the blender and having time away from their litter mates and having time away from mom and learning really, really basic stuff like what a leash is, what it feels like to have a collar on their neck, how to step over low thresholds, how to climb puppy steps, how to play in a ball pit and feel the balls moving around them and hear the sound of the balls crashing against each other and be okay with it because they're just playing a game and games are fun. And socialization is all of that. It's getting your dog used to gear. It's getting your dog used to being in a tight space, having something over their head, having things thrown past them, hearing loud noises, seeing things that move all of a sudden, seeing small animals and not reacting, being okay with being bored in public, hearing fireworks, seeing fireworks, walking over a bridge, walking through water puddles, swimming in a pool or a lake, meeting people in uniform, wearing boots, having their claws done, having their face worked on, getting ready for a vet visit, walking through stores and ignoring shelves, but also just walking through stores and being exposed to everything that a store is. When you and I walk into a store, we see it as a place with stuff, like bare minimum place with stuff. When your dog walks into a store, they have a bunch of different things they're looking at. So they see everything on the shelves, they see the bright lights, they see other people, they see shopping carts, they see shopping baskets, people moving quickly, people moving slowly, flashing lights. If you're in a place like Lowe's, they're going to see machinery that moves and beeps and looks weird. And dogs don't really have the concept of, oh, that's a forklift. To them, that's a box that's really big, that's moving and beeping. And it's just a different way of seeing the world. And they have slippery floors or hard floors or cold floors, stuff on the shelves at snout level. There's food dropped on the ground. There's stuff spilled on the floor. There's the smells of people who've been there before that are still on the floor. There's the smell of cleaning supplies on the floor from messes or from night shift cleaning up. There's people of all different ages, people of all different races, people with different accents, people who move a little differently than how you or how the dog's handler moves. And all of that stuff, if you skip over the part where you teach your dog how to be okay with it and how to take it in stride, that stuff can be extremely overwhelming for a dog, because it's kind of like if you grew up in your house and you got really used to your house and you guys never really went anywhere other than your house and your small town, and then you went to New York City, you would be really overwhelmed. And it might be okay, you might figure it out, but you might also be extremely overwhelmed the first day or the first few hours, because there's just so much more stimulation for your brain to process, and you don't know where anything is. You're in an unfamiliar place, you're dealing with situations and scenarios that you've never experienced before. Things like navigating a subway, being on a subway, being in crowds, having to walk everywhere, and stuff like that. That's just so far removed from your normal everyday environment in your house and in your little town or your little neighborhood, that it takes a little while for you to accept that environment. Now, we as humans possess the ability to rationalize. That car moves faster than the tractors do, but it's okay. It's just a car. It's definitely more than likely not going to leap off the road and murder me. Your dog doesn't possess the ability to rationalize the same way we do. So, to us, like where I live, road traffic is basically non-existent. And when it does happen, it's tractors and farm equipment and the occasional pickup truck going 60 miles an hour. But even when I go to a local city, the road traffic is greatly increased. And so the sound of cars is louder. Things move faster. You have to really, really make sure when you cross the road that you're not going to get creamed. And it is a different sensory experience for me. Now, I am more in tune with that because the CRPS changes how my sensory nervous system interprets information. But I do feel like that makes me a better dog trainer because it makes me more aware of all of the stuff that's going on in any given environment. Whereas a lot of people might be able to just kind of block it out and tune it out, and it's just part of the world. I'm more aware of it, and so it helps me figure out how to break down an environment and see it maybe the same way my dog might be seeing it. So that's what it's like when you take your dog out of their home, out of your quiet home that only has your two kids or no kids, Maybe it's just you and your dog in the house. Maybe it's just you, your dog, and your spouse. Maybe you have a cat. Maybe you don't have a cat. But it's your environment. It's what the dog considers their world. Your house and your yard and your walk route. That's what they consider their world. That's what is normal to them. If you suddenly take them out of that and you take them to a pet store where there are a bunch of other dogs, there are dogs who are stressed out, there are dogs who are overexcited, there are dogs who suddenly run into their space, there are treats at eye level, there's stuff on the floor, there's cramped aisles, there's checkout lines, there's shopping carts, there's more road traffic, there's bright lights, there's slippery floors. You're suddenly throwing your dog in New York City and saying, just deal with it, it's fine, and not actually giving them any tools to help precipitate that. And that's really unfair. And so that's one reason I promote socialization for all dogs, not just service dogs. But I want to try and help people understand that when you take your dog out of your house, part of your responsibility as a dog owner is to come up with ways to handle various situations to help teach your dog that this is okay, this is fine, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, be neutral, don't react to it, and how to handle it when your dog does overreact to something so that you know how to get them back down to a neutral state of mind, get them back down to baseline, and then record it in your head of like, okay, that was a problem. I need to talk to my trainer, or I need to work on some ways to work my dog around that in the future. So, methods for exposing your dog to stuff, methods for handling problems, and the self awareness to recognize when a problem happens and to go, okay, mental note, definitely need to work on that in the future. The other thing is knowing how to handle different types of scenarios. A lot of people assume that treats are the solution for everything, and they're simply not. If your dog is genuinely upset or afraid of something, they're not going to take food. You need to have a different tool in your arsenal for handling that type of situation. And so all of that goes into socialization. Socialization is about preparing your dog, it's about teaching your dog, it's also about you learning specific methods for helping your dog process stuff. And when I teach clients, I go over socialization, but I primarily use 4 different methods, and some of these methods rely on obedience training, and some of these methods rely on games, and some of them do just rely on treats. The methods that I like to use, no matter what age of dog I'm working with, are working at a distance, working through something, simple existence, and positive association. Working through or working at a distance means going to the stimuli and working at a distance from it. So playing a game a distance away from it, or working on known obedience that your dog is really good at a distance away from the thing. And the more confident and the more responsive your dog gets, like you say sit and they sit on the first try, not you say sit and they're really distracted and they forget what sit means. Okay, so you say sit, they sit every single time, then you move closer and you work up to being able to be at the desired distance from the thing. So if you're at the zoo, that's being on the other side of the fence. If it's being in a grocery store, it's the confidence to walk past a shopping cart and not flinch and not shy away from it. Just keep moving forward like it's not a big deal. And the way you do it with different things changes. So at the zoo, you might do some training like 6 feet away from where the animals are. In a shopping cart scenario, if you're able to work with a shopping cart outside of a store, you might have a friend push the shopping cart back and forth 15 feet away from your dog, and then you gradually get closer and closer until your dog is walking with the shopping cart. So that's what working the distance means. Working through often gets combined with working the distance. But working through is just getting the dog to do the thing they don't want to do so that they overcome that mental block of doing it and being involved in it. This happens a lot with things like ramps, staircases, water, stuff like that. A really easy way to start that at home is convincing your dog to play fetch over or run across bubble wrap. They get used to the sound of something moving underneath them. They get used to the sound of them making a sound as they run across something. I do it if, we have a wood trailer that has a metal ramp. And when my dogs walk on the metal ramp, it shakes underneath them and it makes a really loud metal clanging noise. And so the way I helped my dogs learn the confidence to go up and down this ramp and to not be worried about the noise was I just asked them to go up and down the ramp a bunch of times every single time the ramp was down. And the more we did it, the less my dogs worried about it. So much so that my dogs actually learned that the trailer is where their water bowl lives when we're on field walks. And so we get back from a walk and they race up that ramp and immediately go to their water bowl, and they don't even care about the ramp because we've trained it so well. And working through it might also include working the distance. When we discovered that my friend's dog was a little worried about my rabbit, we set up the hutch in a static location. That meant that the hutch was in one spot and it wasn't going to move. And then we let my friend work on heel. This was something the dog was good at. This was something the dog was confident with. And she just had that dog walk and heel with her back and forth past the rabbit hutch. They started out about 10 feet away from the rabbit hutch, and anytime he didn't try to lean away or pull on the leash, they got a little bit closer until we were able to walk 3 feet away from the rabbit hutch. And at 3 feet is when we started noticing the most dramatic response from him. He was really leaning into her, hiding behind her, pulling away. He really didn't want to be close to this rabbit. And so we stayed at 3 feet for a while. And by a while, I mean we stayed at 3 feet for about 2 or 3 weeks until he was able to walk past the rabbit hutch 3 feet away and he wasn't reacting to the rabbit anymore. Now, if it had been something else, we might have then moved until we were right up next to the rabbit hutch. But since I also teach boundary and respect for other animals, we didn't want to encroach upon the rabbit's personal space too much, so we didn't push that. But that's an example of working through it. Simple existence is my absolute favorite socialization method because it's the easiest and lowest impact for people with CRPS and other types of disabilities. The basic idea of it is that you just go to a place and you let your dog experience the environment without putting any really high expectations on them. The expectation bar is, hey, you're going to sit here and observe, or you're going to lay down and observe, and we're just going to hang out for a while until you're really thoroughly bored or until you stop reacting. And then once you stop reacting to the environment, we're going to hang out for 5 or 10 minutes longer, and then we're going to leave. Just so that your dog doesn't learn, oh, okay, as soon as I stop reacting, we get to leave and we're done with this. No, you want to hang out for a little while longer, really submit, really give your dog a chance to be bored, to be neutral. And by neutral, I'm saying that word a lot, and I know it's annoying. Neutral just means your dog isn't reacting to anything. A good example of neutral is the photo at the top of this screen with the brown dog in the blue vest and the red boots. He's very neutral. He's observing his environment, but largely he's just taking it all in stride. He's not getting worked up about anything. He's not afraid of anything. He's not overly alert or like on the edge of his seat ready to go someplace. He's just there. That's what you're looking for, is a dog that's just there. They're participating, they're listening to you, they take cues, but they're also not agitated or overly alert or barking or whining or trying to get out of doing whatever it is that you guys are doing. That photo is also an example of Simple Exist. What we did is we took the dogs to the pet store. We set up about 10 feet outside the pet store and then asked our dogs to lay down and just hang out outside the entrance. We watched dogs come and go. We watched dogs of all different sizes, different people, different energy of dogs, and the expectation was just lay here and watch it and observe it and let it go. And that was it. And that's what simple existence is. A lot of times, simple existence might be going to a coffee shop and hanging out for an hour or two to give your dog a chance to fall asleep, essentially, to the sounds of a coffee shop. Getting used to laying on a cold floor or slippery floor, getting used to being bored, getting used to the sound of coffee machines and pouring and ice and people talking and smells and food on the floor, and just being in the environment and being a background element as opposed to directly interacting with anything. The fourth method I use is positive association. So that is when we use treats or praise or chew toys to help the dog make a positive link between the thing and whatever else is going on. So when we met the firefighter with Austin, I played a game with Austin to keep his focus on me, and then I let him go up and investigate the officer, and he got to sniff everything, hear his voice muffled in the mask, and then he got some treats from me while also getting pets from the firefighter. He honestly didn't care about the firefighter. He thought it was a really fun experience and people were giving him attention, which was fantastic. Another example of positive association is I use it a lot with gear. So if I'm getting my dog used to a new harness or boots, we put the boots on, we put the gear on, we go for a walk. And I don't focus on heel, still maintain leash manners, but the focus is on, hey, sniff, explore, have a good time. I want you to try and let go of focusing on how this new weird vest feels or how this weird boot feels, and just focus on being a dog and exploring your environment. And the more you do that, it helps your dog accept the feeling of the gear and they worry about it less. Another way to do that with gear is playing fetch in gear. I don't recommend that for working dog vests, but it's great for boots or things like your car harness or a safety harness. Or giving your dog a Kong filled with peanut butter and treats while they wear their new work vest or while they wear a prong collar or an e-collar or something like that. Some change to their attire or their environment while they enjoy something that they like. Now, that isn't always going to work. My first dog, Robbie, was afraid of fireworks. He was so afraid of fireworks that he wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't do eye contact. He wouldn't take treats. He wouldn't play games. The best I could get him to do was either you're going to go in your crate, you're just going to hear the noise, you're going to exist, you're going to process the noise and realize it's okay on your own, which still counts as socialization training, or we're going to do a bunch of obedience and you're going to focus on the obedience and going for a walk, and then I'm going to put you in your crate and you're just going to exist and still hear the noise. And that did work. Now, he never got 100% over his thing with fireworks, but he got to a point where he would hear them, look up, go to his crate, and then take a nap. And I was okay with that. If we were out in public and he heard something similar, his ears would go back, but he stayed in work mode. He just walked a little bit closer to me, but he stayed focused. He did what he was asked, and everything was okay. When you go about doing socialization training, it's important to understand dog body language so that you know when to leave, when to stay, when to push your dog to keep moving forward, and when to take some of the pressure off. If you don't understand what a dog looks like when they're genuinely stressed out, you might be accidentally encouraging them to be stressed out, praising at the wrong time, or you might, if you think that they're okay and they're genuinely stressed out and you leave someplace, you're inadvertently telling them it's okay. You should definitely get stressed out here because if you do, we'll just leave. And I made that mistake with my own dog. I didn't realize how upset he was over something new in the environment when we went someplace, and I handled it wrong. And it created this huge problem that then I had to spend a lot of extra time fixing. So, understanding dog body language is really, really critical. If you don't feel like you understand dog body language, you want to talk to somebody who has studied it and has talked about it a lot, please set up a consult with me. I am also hoping to release a downloadable file on Patreon soon that talks about body language so that you can self-study on your own. Socialization, like I said, begins when the dog pops out. But it is so, so important to keep doing socialization throughout the dog's life. When you get a young puppy, when you get a 2-month-old puppy, they have several what are called fear periods or critical socialization periods that they go through as they develop and mature into adult dogs. And when they're in those periods, they need a lot of socialization. They need a lot of confidence training. They need a lot of exposure to different places, sights, sounds, textures, elements, whatever. Walking on gravel, walking on concrete, walking on steps, bridges, heights, loud noises, quiet noises, road traffic, people, babies, everything you can possibly think of. They need a ton of socialization training because if something is missed in that fear period and it's introduced later, they could develop problems with it because it wasn't included when they were coding how to behave and how to accept life. If they have a negative experience during a fear period, it could also stick with them the same way. If something really, really strongly traumatic and negative, or even just something minor, I mean, dogs can be affected in very small ways sometimes, and so it's understandable that we miss it. But if something happens during a critical fear period, like let's say you're vacuuming the house and you accidentally vacuum over their tail, that little window in their life, even if they were fine with the vacuum cleaner 2 weeks ago, because they were in a critical fear period, they could now be very afraid of vacuum cleaners, and you may have to redo a bunch of socialization training with vacuum cleaners. And a lot of people don't know about these periods, and so they get dogs who haven't been well socialized, and it takes a little bit more work on their end to have a really well-rounded, stable dog. This is where it's extremely important for service dogs. Service dogs have to be able to be okay with anything they might encounter in public and anything the general public might do to them. And this starts to get very difficult from an ethical standpoint because we need our dogs to work for us, but we ask them to put up with a bunch of bullshit for us. Our dogs are not allowed to react when another dog invades their space. They're not allowed to react negatively when people interfere or people invade their space. They're not allowed to eat stuff off the floor. A service dog can't startle and hide underneath something when they hear a loud noise. They can startle, but it needs to be, what was that? Oh, it's fine. And like 3-second window of startling and then returning to normal. They need to be okay with being rushed by people or sudden movements or rushed by dogs and just not do anything. They just have to do their job and remain calm and composed the entire time. And that's very, very difficult to teach a dog, and it's a huge ask of a dog. Another thing is we ask them to wear weird gear. We ask them to be in uncomfortable places like hard floors, tight spaces. We ask them to ignore food that's at snout level. We ask them to not smell stuff. We put them in situations that are just downright weird, that you would never expect to find a dog to be in, like laying in a doctor's waiting room while someone gets an MRI, or standing up on their hind end to push a button to open a door, walking over sky bridges, going on elevators, seeing escalators. I don't recommend taking your service dog on an escalator, but some teams do teach it. Our dogs, they put up with a lot, but the only way they can put up with everything that could possibly be experienced in the human world is if we as owners take the time to do socialization right. Now, another thing to know about socialization is, okay, you got a dog from the shelter, he's 1 year old, you want to train him to be a service dog, but you have no idea what happened to this dog for the first year of its life. That's okay. It's not ideal, but it's okay. You can ask questions of the shelter. You can run an evaluation on the dog. If you're not sure what questions to ask or what to look at when you're evaluating a dog, set up a consult with me. I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. But you can make an educated guess and then take it upon yourself to do as much socialization training as you can and really, really focus on that in addition to starting commands and things like that for service dog training. But you need to know how they're going to do with the socialization before you can fully understand if they have the mental capacity to be a service dog. Because if they don't have the mental stability and confidence to go into different stores and be exposed to different types of people and sights and sounds and smells, while also fulfilling the expectations that we're going to have for them, like walking in a heel, doing task work, ignoring stuff, then you seriously have to look at if this dog has what it takes to be a service dog. And so socialization, it also never stops. Even when your dog is a finished service dog, if you guys, COVID messed with so many teams because the dog got in the habit of being exposed to environments that were not home and then stopped going places and stopped getting that exposure, stopped getting that constant neutral background exposure to busier road traffic, bright lights, different smells, different floor textures, different scenarios. They just got used to home and that was it. And unfortunately, it kind of hit the reset button for a lot of service dog teams. They went back out in public when it was safe and their dog was a little screwy. They forgot what automatic doors were. They were a little weird with shopping carts or sudden noises or crowds, and teams had to redo socialization training. COVID was a weird thing where it affected a ton of people, and so it was a lot of teams having this problem. It was not an isolated incident, and it definitely wasn't anything that was at fault from the teams. It was just a crappy situation and no good way to explain it to the service dogs. But it's a good example. Because if you suddenly rip a dog out of public access and then throw him back in, they're like, what is this crap? And you have to kind of redo it. So, one thing that we try to do, we live in a rural area, and we try to, even if we don't really need to, we try to go to town every single week so that my service dog is always getting exposure to stores and city life and environments and experiences that are outside of home, so that we maintain his socialization, we maintain his confidence and his ability to handle various situations. We do spend a ton of time on that simple existence, though. So, when we were first training him, we spent a lot of time sitting on benches at the park and just watching the world go by, and sitting at benches outside of stores and watching the world go by, and sitting in benches in stores and watching the world go by. And it sounds like a really laid back way to train your dog, and it absolutely is. And that's why I love it. It gives your dog a chance to observe various things and observe a lot of different things without directly interacting with anything. And you cover a lot of things on your socialization checklist without you having to immediately go out and actually find any of these things. Should socialization include direct interaction? In general, no. Direct interaction should be a very small part of your socialization experience. There are times when you want your dog to directly interact, like interacting with people in uniform so that they know that they're not scary monsters, or interacting with a mascot so that they know what it is and they don't think it's some creepy giant statue. I frequently let my service dog smell statues so that he can kind of get over the, what are you thing, and then realizes it's inanimate, it's boring, and we move on. Takes like 30 seconds. Interacting with other people is not necessarily something that you need to do, especially for your service dog, because you don't want your service dog constantly going around expecting affection from strangers. But in that age of 2 to 4 months old, it might be beneficial to have your dog meet as many people as possible while staying focused on you, like getting pets from different types of people while their focus is being maintained on you, so that they learn about different types of people in a positive setting. But then once that 4 month mark hits, they need to stop meeting a bunch of people and just learn how to focus on you and see people from a distance. I do not recommend letting your dog meet a bunch of different dogs, because usually the scenario that you're going to encounter that in public is a recipe for disaster. Meeting other dogs on leash and at the dog park are fraught with frustration and tension, and it's just not a good setup. If you do want your puppy to be exposed to other dogs, ask around your neighborhood, see if anybody has a dog who is good with puppies or has another puppy that's around the same age, so you guys can set up play dates. It is important for dogs to have time with other dogs when they're puppies, because puppies learn from their litter mates and from mom and from older dogs what's allowed in terms of play and behavior and manners and stuff like that, and what's not allowed. But it's not critical. It's critical that they get it from their litter mates and their mom, but you're not going to have a crap dog if your dog never gets a chance to play with other dogs. And actually, a lot of dogs don't necessarily want to play with other dogs, so you're not even really robbing them of anything. They want to spend time with you, and that's what we want too. Socialization does sometimes mean forcing your dog to interact with something that they would rather avoid, like the vet or the groomer or stairs or heights or slippery floors or bridges that move underneath them. But if you never help your dog learn to work through that scenario and work through it in a way that they stay confident and trust you in that situation, then you're robbing them of the opportunity to overcome that fear. You're keeping them in a state of stress, and you're potentially making more things more dangerous for other people. For instance, if you don't teach your dog how to accept having their ears touched, their feet handled, etc., you're potentially putting your vet and groomers at risk of getting bit or getting thrown into a wall when the dog squirms out of their grasp. So socialization it's a really big topic. It covers a lot of things. The socialization list of like all the different things I give to people for service dogs, I think is like 200 different things to socialize your dog to. And when you're starting socialization with your dog, the best advice I can give you is to go to places without your dog and sit and just take note. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you feel? What's the ground like? Are there any terrain changes? What is the traffic level? Is it really busy? Is it quiet? What kind of people are there? And take note and write all this stuff down so that you have a better idea going into a situation what the challenges and what the distractions are going to be for your dog. Have a plan. How are you going to walk them through problems? How are you going to help them work through it to reach a goal? What are your goals? If you know your dog is afraid of something like water, your goal may not be getting the dog in water. Your goal might be getting your dog within 10 feet of the water and staying on a placemat. That's okay. So being able to modify the goals based on your dog, your situation, and what you're eventually trying to achieve with this dog. Socialization is heavy. It's complicated. It takes a long time. But it can be a fun thing to do with your dog, and it can expand their life, and it can make them more confident and more safe. So if you're interested in learning more about socialization, I encourage you to sign up for a consult with me so we can talk it through together. I can give you some worksheets that will help you start to see socialization and do different exercises with your dog to help you tackle various situations and exposures. I really do want you to succeed. And talking to you one-on-one is going to help me do that. If this podcast was unclear, because it is a very complicated, it covers a lot of stuff. So if you're still confused on this, set up a consult with me. I'd love to talk to you and help you and your dog start socialization training. Thank you for listening.